Hey guys, David Pingree here with Upshift Online. And we're here today with KTM's Quinn Cody talking about some settings on your 1090 and your adventure models. As a guy who's pretty new to the adventure bike market, I'm kind of looking to improve some settings for myself and get some tips and pointers from a guy who really knows what he's doing. So I'm actually excited to do this interview. I hope you guys gain something from it too. Quinn, when I first took one of these off-road, I struggled trying to figure out where do I want the anti-lock brakes on. I mean, I stabbed on it the first time and the pedal went to the ground, and the traction control was screwing me up. I can't steer with the rear, so I kind of fumbled my way through it a little bit. But talk us through some of those settings, particularly off-road. What do you recommend on these?
For sure. So there's quite a few different settings on this. You have 4 drive modes, which is street, sport, rain, and off-road. So it can be a little complicated. You can turn ABS on, off, in any of those modes. Today we kind of wanted to just talk about off-road mode and then maybe some of the preferred modes that I like to ride the bike in, or that you should try to ride the bike in at home. First off-road mode. It limits the bike to 100 horsepower. So it cuts it down from the 125 horsepower to 100. Gives you an optimized traction control for off-road. So it allows you to basically spin the rear wheel a little bit in the sand, but the traction control is there to kind of intervene and save you. If you pair that with the off-road ABS, it gives you the ability to skid the rear wheel, but it modulates the front ABS for you. So if you grab a big handful of a front brake, it's there to kind of save you, and that's a big deal on these bikes with the big dual rotors and things like that.
Yeah, I noticed I was just either on or off, and so to know that off-road anti-lock brake system still modulates the front, that's a really cool feature that maybe some people, I didn't know about it, so that was a good learning point for me today. So that way I can skid the rear and steer with the back in the dirt like I want to, but I still have some help in the front so I don't grab too much.
Yeah, exactly.
And then anything else off-road that you'd recommend, or things you like?
So my preferred setting, I prefer to have the bike in sport mode. So I put the drive mode to sport, which gives you a full 125 horsepower. It gives you a little quicker throttle response than off-road mode. And then I run the traction control off so that I can slide the rear of the bike around as much as possible. And I always run the off-road ABS on, because sometimes you pop out onto the pavement and maybe you want to have ABS in the front. If you come around a corner and it's a little slick and you grab some front brake, it's there to help you. So I can't outbrake the off-road ABS on this bike.
Yeah, that's a cool feature, and I would recommend anybody trying that. Keeping that front ABS on is almost a safety feature, and it's just there to help you. You keep you from going down. What about anything else? As far as the sport mode, I like that concept of just having a little more power and throttle response, but that's kind of personally based, right? Like, you might be a guy that likes it to be more smooth and likes that off-road setting.
For sure. I mean, there's probably 50 different combinations that you could do with all the different electronics on this bike, but I kind of encourage people to play around with it and see what you can come up with, see what you prefer. Everybody's different, but I enjoy riding the bike in a certain mode, and you might want a little bit more little slower throttle response or something like that. So it's just...
that sounded like a dig at me, but all right, whatever. Slower throttle response for me. What about when we get onto the road? Some different settings that you like to see there?
So I generally run it in sport mode on the road. Maybe not always the right thing to do, but I keep it in off-road ABS at all times, because I just like to have the feel of the rear brake. Even sometimes on the street, I'll drag the rear brake a little bit, and I don't want the rear ABS kicking in. So that's just kind of a personal preference of mine. But, it's...
Yeah. I feel like, as a guy, that if you came from an off-road background, you maybe like that, because I like to modulate the slippage of the rear wheel with the brake pedal as well. But if you are someone that came from more roadside, maybe that's something you're comfortable with. Yeah,
for sure. I mean, you can get used to ABS on the street and learn to ride with it. The other thing is the traction control. The traction control works very well on roads, so you can grab a handful of throttle on the street, and it actually, in sport mode, it allows the rear wheel to spin very slightly, so you can get a little bit of a slide on the pavement without completely losing it.
Okay. So again, some of it comes down to personal preference, what you like, but for me, I'm going to take the advice of a guy who's spent hundreds and hundreds of hours on this thing. So we'll definitely try that out. And I'd like you to take us through a little bit kind of how you toggle through and some of your favorites. We spoke earlier about the dongle that you can attach to these that saves your settings. That's really, really convenient and time-saving if you're out on a ride and you've got off-road stuff kind of plugged into there. You can click on that video and check that out if you haven't seen it yet. But maybe take us through how you kind of get these things set up here on the screen.
So one tip I always give people is, and it's the first thing I do when I get on a new one of these bikes, is I set up my favorites so that I can see what ride mode I'm in. So you can see your traction control, ABS, and your drive mode. And then I also like to put my trip one in there so I can keep track of how far I've ridden on a tank of fuel. The way you set up your favorites is you start scrolling through the menu until you get to set favorites. And then you go ahead and hit the set button, set again, and then it gives you the option to set whatever display you want on your favorites. So again, I go to MTC, push set, and there's my favorites. I already had them set up, so you're good. Then you can go back to your favorites, and generally I ride the whole time with my favorites on, so that when I stop, I know if my ABS is on or what drive mode I'm in, if my traction control is on or off.
All right, so Quinn's giving you guys some great setup tips, and myself as well. So next time you're out on the trail, you can give those things a try, get some of your favorites set up, and see if those settings don't help you. And this is all coming from a guy who completed the Red Bull Romaniacs event on one of these bikes. How the hell was that?
Yeah, Romaniacs, it was a challenge. I guess you could say it was kind of a bad idea to take it on in the first place. But, you know, I'm into that kind of stuff. I like to suffer. So, you know, it was cool, and we got it done and kind of proved the capability of this motorcycle.
And maybe it's time to see a psychiatrist now, or?
Yeah, definitely.
Well, hey, thanks for watching Upshift Online, and stay tuned for more videos that will help you turn one of these things into a more custom fit for you. Thanks for watching.